Thank you very much, Janie, and it's truly an honour to be here. I felt so privileged to be asked to talk. Yes, Jane Morris, and I'm from Dying with Dignity Victoria, another Australian. I can hear the groans. And the topic of my presentation today is ageless advocacy, and I'm going to be talking about a new program that we started in Victoria, and that's the Young Ambassadors. And I'm going to start with a video. Video, please.
The Young Ambassadors are a group of young people who believe in the power of choice. Choice in how we live and choice in how we leave this world. We strive to create a world where every person has access to quality end-of-life care options, including voluntary assisted dying.
We're a group of young people that want to encourage open and honest conversations about end of life.
I believe everybody has the right to live a good life and to also have a good death.
My connection with Dying with Dignity Victoria is a pretty personal one. My mum passed away many years ago now. With her illness, we knew that that was terminal, that we knew that there was a certain time frame that she had to live. So she was extremely proactive in understanding what her options were. Although it's not going to be the end result that we wished for, she's ultimately going to have a choice, which gave us comfort.
I joined the Dying with Dignity Youth Ambassadors quite recently. My fiance, Alex Blaine, used the voluntary assisted dying medication on the 5th of January 2021. Alex cared so much about dying with dignity. Everyone should have that end-of-life experience.
We want to be better at listening, to understand the issues people face, advocate for change, inform people about the choices available to them, connect people to services and supports, encourage conversations, and grow the movement of young people advocating for end-of-life care issues.
It's extremely rewarding being connected to the group. We've all got our own jobs, but we still come together, think about what we can do to make a change, particularly when it comes to awareness for younger people.
The Young Ambassadors are the people that are going to take this amazing organisation into the future. We're here for the long haul, and we're here to try and help government understand what younger people want in the future and in the present.
As young people, we think, we're immortal, nothing can get to us, but unfortunately, that's so not true. I hope that we can continue conversations, normalise death and grief, because as we age, having that knowledge and choices is really powerful.
Join us in our mission to make quality end-of-life choices a reality for all people. Together, we can create a future where every voice is amplified and every choice is respected.
I still get very emotional watching that, because the young man in that was the son of one of my best friends who died in her 50s from motor neurone disease. And I think if Jenny was here now, she'd just be so proud of seeing her son. The next slide. During my studies years ago, these words had a profound effect on me, inscribed on a tombstone. Terry Scarvo, born 1963, departed this earth 1990, at peace 2005. Terry was a 26-year-old American who suffered a cardiac arrest at home and ended up in an irreversible vegetative state, requiring nasogastric feeding. After 8 years of lying in this persistent vegetative state, her husband, who was also her legal guardian, requested that the nasogastric tube be removed, as he said would have been her wishes, and let her die. Her parents refused. And so ensued a battle in the court, starting in the Florida court and ending up in the Supreme Court. Finally, her nasogastric tube was removed. This was 15 years after her cardiac arrest. Terry was 41. And to me, this just brought home the message: young people die horrible deaths, and death is indiscriminate. Sorry. 2 years ago at our AGM, I looked around the room when I was talking, and I noticed a young girl. She was totally engrossed in the content of the meeting, nodding vigorously at the appropriate stage, and I was quite shocked at my reaction at seeing such a young person. And I asked why, and it obviously dawned on me very, very quickly why I was so shocked. The answer was obvious. We incorrectly assume that any talk of death and dying should be directed to the elderly. Why weren't there more young people there? So I went home and looked at our membership figures and looked at the ages. And 1% of our members were under 30. 1% were 30 to 40 years of age. 4% were 40 to 50. And 70% were in their 70s and 80s. Now, a vet who spoke yesterday snatched my question because I was going to do hands up of age and gauge everyone's age here, so thank you, Yvette. But it was very interesting, and the number of hands that showed up for the lower age groups were very promising. Anyway, after this searching and finding that we really had very few young members, I thought we should start a young ambassador program. And we started it in Victoria just last year, and it's already become a national program, and we're hoping to make it international, what it sort of is, because I think there's a New Zealander very interested. So if anyone from different countries have some young people they'd like to get involved, please let me know and I can give you some directions. Young people need to be involved about end-of-life choices and about voluntary assisted dying. And the best people to provide them with such information are young people themselves. Sorry, I forgot to. Young people themselves. Today's young activists are very tuned in, very tech-savvy, adaptable and connected. They have a voice like never before, amplified in the digital space. This enables them to communicate, mobilise and rally support in a way that sets them apart from previous generations. Who can forget Greta Thunberg? At the age of 15, addressing the United Nations Climate Change Council, asking, how dare you? How dare you fail your youth on climate change? The following year, 1.4 million children worldwide walked out of school demanding climate action. Then there was Malala Yousafzai. At the age of 11, she wrote a book about life under Taliban occupation. She became a Pakistani educational activist. In 2014, she became the youngest recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. At the age of 15, she was shot for her activism, but she survived. Other issues, examples of other issues that have been transformed through new campaign strategies promoted by the younger generation are the gender pay gap, same-sex marriage, and the Me Too movement. Oop. Many cultures and age groups still consider talk of death taboo, but this is changing. National and international experiences like the COVID epidemic have led to a societal reckoning. Many of us were delivered a barrage of images every night during COVID, projected into our living rooms, and we were forced to contemplate the realities and the logistics of death. Many of these images were brutal, undignified, and involved young people. Voting in Australia is compulsory for those over the age of 18, So many younger Australians have a vested interest in future policies and how that will affect them. People of all ages have the capacity to effect positive change in even the most complex and sensitive of societal conversations. They see the need for VAD to be inclusive, robust, and flexible in our rapidly changing world, in a world where society's attitudes towards death and dying are rapidly evolving. We can never be complacent about our voluntary assisted dying laws. Our young ambassadors will inherit these laws. Our opponents in Victoria have told us one of their primary focuses is to see our VAD laws repealed. So that is why we need the young ambassadors to understand voluntary assisted dying legislation and to be involved in any amendments made to it. And ultimately, the main thing is to ensure that the legislation will remain set in stone to serve those suffering in death for generations to come. Our young ambassadors are fighting for the voices of young people to be heard. They are standing up for the human right to have their needs, values, and preferences acknowledged as human beings, not just as a voter demographic. How will they achieve this? The digital world our youth inhabit today knows no boundaries, allowing them to reach broad and diverse audiences and catalyse meaningful change much faster than ever before. Young people can challenge traditional views, stigma, and misconceptions surrounding VAD because we have cleared the path for them and allowed them to engage in open and honest dialogue. Through social media posts, mainstream media, they're able to promote the issues affecting young people at the end of their life and most importantly, inform them about the existence of voluntary assisted dying. Many of our young ambassadors have been through the voluntary assisted dying experience with a loved one. Their stories are very powerful and they need to be told. Our young ambassadors are passionate about human rights and the future of democracy. They're deeply motivated by the principles of dignity, autonomy, and quality of both life and death. Voluntary assisted dying embraces all these critical principles. Amongst our group of young ambassadors, they come from a diverse working backgrounds, and such as communications, ethics, public policy, and health professionals. Many also come from diverse cultural backgrounds, which is so important because they help overcome this critical language barrier we have where older generations of people who can't speak are ill-informed about the existence of voluntary assisted dying. Younger generations, they're much more willing to have conversations about end of life than us. Many are particularly passionate about bodily autonomy and dignity and the right to choose. Oh, right. Our Young Ambassador program only just started last year, but already they've achieved a lot. Initially, they sent out on social media a survey just to try and engage people and gauge the depth of knowledge they had about voluntary assisted dying. And of course, this initiated a lot of discussion and interest. The next thing they did was create a petition for our state government, and this looked at the depressing reality that many terminally ill young people in Victoria face because they have to languish, in aged care facilities because there are no facilities that specifically cater for young people who are dying. We also have in Australia coming up in October what's called Youth Voice Week. And young Australians are invited to send in a powerful story to Parliament, and a couple are selected and they're read out by a federal MP, and this amplifies the voice of the younger people. We were very lucky to have one of our young ambassadors who's been chosen, and a federal MP will read out her story, and she travelled the journey with her mother and faced quite a few impediments and obstacles along the way with VAD. It's a very, very powerful story. Now, the next slide I've managed to sneak in. It's not really in tune with what I've been saying, but Dying with Dignity are about to embark on yet another program. We have got a new group of Dying with Dignity ambassadors, our canine ambassadors. The statistical and operational success of support and assistance dogs around the world speak for themselves. Ollie and Mia will help create an environment conducive to voluntary assisted dying discussions. We do a lot of presentations to the public, and often the first part of our presentation is usually about advanced care directives, and then we'll go on to the voluntary assisted dying part. And usually there's sort of a palpable change of atmosphere, and we're just thinking having these dogs will be lovely. The other thing Dying with Dignity Victoria does is we provide witnesses to go for the written consent part of the VAD process. And I know a couple of times I've been to sign, and it has been quite a tense atmosphere. Not all family members agree, and we think it would be lovely if that patient wants to be able to take a dog to ease the stress, so to speak. Dying with Dignity young ambassadors are securing the future of voluntary assisted dying and end-of-life choice. It's been my absolute privilege to address you all here today and tell you about our program. It is reassuring to know the future is in such good hands, and dare I say, paws. I would love to say that's jet lag humour, but I wrote these before I got on the plane. And I'd just like to finish, my jet lag's been really bad, and at 2 a.m. this morning I saw that Anton Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, had just put out a statement, and I thought, oh wow, he'll help me fill in the last few seconds. And it was a message to young people worldwide. Do not accept that what we have today is inevitable. Do not accept that you cannot transform things. To change the world, we need to unite, mobilise, and fight for our common future. And finally, whenever I give a talk, I always like to reference my dear mother who died from motor neurone disease. I do it for you, Mum. Thank you for listening.